and this is another episode of Ink Medicine with Micah Riot. Here in my studio today, I have one of my closest friends, Blue Sirius. Blue, please introduce yourself. I would like you to tell us your pronouns, which decade you grew up in, and what was your favorite movie from the 80s.
Hello. Yes, my name is Blue Sirius. I was born in the mid-70s, so I guess I grew up in the 80s and 90s. My favorite movie from the 80s. I don't know, you know, that whole like Teen Wolf, Back to the Future. I liked Michael J. Fox, except for I couldn't really watch TV, so I wasn't into his TV show, but his movies. Mm-hmm. And did I forget? Was
the pronouns?
Oh, yes, my pronouns. I don't have a preference.
You don't have a preference?
People just decide.
Okay.
It's always interesting to watch, and to watch the folks that kind of go back and forth, depending on whom they're speaking to about me. They'll change my pronouns. Like, I was dating a woman that was her mother was an older lesbian, and all of her aunties were older lesbians, so she would use she. But if she was, speaking to her contemporaries, she would use they or he, and I don't even think she was aware of that code switching. Mm. I would just observe it.
Cool. I like that. How did we meet?
I had literally just moved to San Francisco from Los Angeles. I was staying in a friend's.
2007.
September 2007. I was staying in a friend's in-law apartment in Sunset, and the only other person I knew in San Francisco invited me to go to Vietnamese food in the Mission Sunflower. Mm-hmm. And I was, there dining with her, and I kept seeing this cute queer trying to get my attention from a couple of tables over. You were definitely flirting. You definitely had like a more androgynous, boyish presentation back then. You were using he, him pronouns, and you asked me out. And so
I came over and gave you my number, right?
Yes. Like you came, you were invited over to the table, and we exchanged numbers, and you asked me out. And I'd said, I was brand new in town, so why don't you show me something that you think I should know about the city? And so you curated this fabulous date. You showed me Bayreuth, and you showed me Dolores Park, and you took me to the queer synagogue because they were having a discussion. There was a big debate. Some members of the congregation wanted to take the practice of Tefillin, to a spiritual practice, to Folsom Street Fair. And then other members of the congregation were really up in arms about that. So we went there and listened to the different members of the congregation have debate and really upset about this. And I knew that I wanted to go out with you again. I mean, I was torn because at that time I was very much my head was turned by femmes. But I really liked you, and so I wanted to go out with you again because I wanted you in my life. I didn't have that clarity yet that it wasn't I was just going to see what happened. It wasn't feeling like a romantic match, but I didn't have the clarity to say that yet. But you had a lot of clarity to go, hey, I'm not feeling it romantically, but I want to know you as a friend. And so that started our friendship.
Well, but then somebody else who we both knew essentially said, you two should go do this workshop, right? And we hadn't really, it wasn't too long after we had that date, but we hadn't really talked that much in between. And so that person said, Blue, you have a car. Micah, you don't have a car. Why didn't you go together and go to this thing? We went to this thing, and then we signed up for more of the same thing.
Right. We ended up in a shamanic circle, a 6-month. it was a 13-month thing, but the first 6 months was a commitment.
Well, first it was was there first a circle at Cindy's house, remember?
Yeah, there was something.
So it was not yet the big program, and then we did the program.
Yeah.
So then we moved in together.
Yeah, we entered into local Bay Area kind of a certain shamanic tradition teaching circle. And then, yes, you became a roommate in this little apartment, 2-bedroom apartment on Presida.
was like really big for us.
It was really big. It had a big living room, and so I had the front living room as a bedroom, and then you took the first official bedroom, which was in the middle, and then our friend Shauna had the back bedroom until she left to go play house in Oakland, and then we lived there together until it was a sublet, so until we
got kicked out.
Yeah.
But you were my favorite roommate of any situation I've ever been in.
Oh, I love hearing that.
It was really awesome living together.
I know, I loved it too. I did. I was talking about this earlier. Like, when we lived there, you were doing your tattoo apprenticeship, and I would like come home and you'd be in the kitchen, drawing pieces of fruit because you need to know how to draw different things, and yeah, I loved living with you as well, and that was a really special time.
Special time, and also a special house. That house was so cool with that terraced backyard.
It was.
Yeah, and the Presida.
Yeah, 2-bed. It's like what 2009, 2008, a 2-bedroom with a backyard in San Francisco for $920.
Oh, it was ridiculous. Yeah.
Like total. Yeah, that was a sweet deal.
Yeah, that was a really good time. What do you remember the most about our time living together, besides me drawing fruit in the kitchen?
You like to leave lights on.
Okay.
And sometimes I would come into the kitchen and you'd be wearing little boy briefs and nothing else, and like eating either like half a piece of fruit and putting half of the piece back in the fruit basket. Or one time there was just this like big brownish gray thing on a fork. And the fork had stabbed it. You'd stabbed it with a fork and you were holding it up like it was like a popsicle or something, but you were just eating little bites off of it. And I said, "What's that?" And you're like, "Tongue." And it's like, there you go.
I think I had just gone to visit my grandparents, and my grandma gave me a tongue to go.
Yes. So I walk into the kitchen and you're in little boy briefs and nothing else, standing in the middle with a tongue on a fork, taking little bites off of it.
It's like a pretty great image. I agree.
Yeah. And then, I remember our dating lives. We were both dating people. You'd come out of a relationship. You were kind of, we were both kind of meeting people online. I also remember like cuddling up in my room watching Family Guy on the internet. Mm-hmm. It was really sweet.
Yeah.
Sweet.
That was a good time.
Yeah. And making for our apprenticeship, the spiritual apprenticeship, we had this time period where we were literally making paper mache masks and then decorating those masks kind of with what our like strategies in life are. What are the things that we do to kind of protect ourselves, because we're going to release those. But so after a weekend where we made the masks, we just brought out all the art supplies in the kitchen and we're like painting and drawing on our masks.
Yeah. I miss that. I miss a time when life was so simple that we could like paint masks in the kitchen. I feel like that's just not where I'm at anymore. Like everything just feels so much more like every spare moment I'm working or I'm busy doing this or that, like things that feel a lot less relaxing and less like creative, and creative in some ways. My job is so creative, but in so many ways it just feels so regimented.
Well, you were busy back then. Like you were working 2 jobs often. Like I remember you working at like Trader Joe's and starting to work at the shop and all that. But there's a way, and maybe it's just because we don't live with one another, but I just feel like you're so busy. Like there's always something going on. Yeah, just to kind of like fuck around in the kitchen with making masks and it's just a different pace of life now. It's a different time, and you were in your 20s, and now what are you, in your late 30s?
Yeah. Yeah, you're a little bit older than me.
Yeah, I'm 47.
You are. So, I did my apprenticeship, and then shortly after that, we did a couple tattoos on you. Yeah. What were those couple of tattoos that we did?
Can I go back because those tattoos were really kind of an evolution for me, because I was thinking about this. So just a little history, because I think it's the arc of my journey with tattoos, and you're a really important part of it. Mm-hmm.
Well, hold on. I'll go back even more, and I'll say that, like the black piece you have on your wrist, Like when I first met you, I just thought that was like so cool.
Mm-hmm. They're black flames around a rose outline.
Yes. I was like, that's so hardcore. It's so leather.
Yeah. I mean, tattooing culturally has changed, obviously longer than my lifetime, but even within my lifetime watching it. So, I was born in 1975, and I remember seeing my first tattoos. Like I was like young, like younger than first grade, like toddler, and I was on the Santa Monica Pier.
You were like with your family walking around.
And I remember seeing a guy with all the like a sleeve. Mm-hmm. That's the first tattoo I ever remember seeing, and I remember at that young age just being absolutely in awe and knowing that was for me. And I didn't have anybody that had tattoos in my life. I mean, tattoos were not where they are now, culturally. Yeah. Especially not in like the west side of Los Angeles. But I just knew from that moment on. And then when I was in junior high, I came across at Tower Books the book Modern Primitives. And I was so excited when I found that book with all the tattooing and the piercing and the body modification. And I was in junior high and I thought, oh my God, look at that. Like it felt like home to me. And I got really excited and took it to school. And it was not well received by my peers. Mm-hmm. Like, people didn't understand why I was transfixed with the books. They thought it was disgusting and all of that. And
was that a Fakir book?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Research book, Modern Primitive. So, there's a lot of different things in there. He wasn't the only one in the book.
Let's explain for the listeners. Fakir Musafar, he was kind of a contemporary. He passed away a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. But he was one of the grandfathers of modern body modification as we know it in the West today. Right.
Teaching piercing and doing other, ritual through body modification and such. Yeah. But I didn't know who he was, until that book, right? But that was like junior high. Like I remember just like having the sense of like the images I see and hear speak to me, and my friends that I thought would be excited about it were all like, ugh. And then in high school in 10th grade, when I was still 15, there were a couple of older kids that had a couple of tattoos, but still generally it wasn't like well thought of. And one of those friends knew a shop, like I knew I needed a tattoo. Like all growing up, my mother, if we saw somebody with tattoos, she'd say these really pejorative things, and I would think in my head, well, I'm going to have those one day. Mm-hmm. And this friend, she knew a shop on Hollywood Boulevard. Like in the front they sold t-shirts, and in the back part of the space they did tattoos. And she knew that you could go in there without an ID, and they would ask you your age, and they would ask you what year you were born, and if those matched up, they'd give you a tattoo. Mm-hmm. And so at 15, on the back of a shop in Hollywood Boulevard, I got my first tattoo, which I didn't even know what I wanted. I just needed ink. I just needed ink on my skin. And I went in and I picked like a flash piece off the wall, a rose. And I didn't even have enough money to do anything other than the outline. And so I got the outline of a rose at 15 in this shop. And I was going to go back and get it colored in. And as you can see, here I am 47 and it's still not colored in.
Maybe that's how it's supposed to be.
Exactly. So what happened was a lot of friends at school were like, oh, why'd you do that? What's it going to look like when you're old and wrinkly? It wasn't really received well, which I don't care. All of my tattoos have been for me. They're not for anyone else.
Hold on a second. It's on the outer part of your arm. It's the most obvious place besides your face you can get a tattoo.
Yes, there's no hiding it.
How did your mother react? You came out at 15 with a tattoo.
Well, I had told my mother I was going to get a tattoo. Oh. And she, I think, trying a different tactic with me and not thinking I could get one.
Mm-hmm. She's like, fine, go ahead.
Fine. She was totally trying to call my bluff. Mm-hmm. This was not the way that my mother was around anything. I think she was literally trying a different tactic with me. And so I went and got it. And she couldn't say anything. And then somewhere around that time, I had long hair, and a friend had lifted up the back of my hair and like shaved the under part, but then it was still down long. And when she found that out, she flipped out. And I knew that was about the tattoo.
Oh, interesting.
You know, but, you know, and I was in geometry class, and every day the young woman who's a classmate in front of me would turn around and color my rose tattoo a different color. I bet
you like that.
I did. I really liked that. I was like, okay, I'm getting a lot of like, why did you do that? And people don't understand, but this is some positive attention. So she would color in my rose every day a different color.
Did you think she was cute?
She wasn't my type, but I liked the attention.
Yeah, sure.
You know, I was already out. I came out in January of 91 when I was 15. I got the tattoo in April of 91.
Did you come out as bi or gay?
I initially came out as bi, and then by the time that the summer hit, I was like, oh, I really don't. You know, that's just not the way I am. So back then it was the language of a dyke. I was a dyke. I never considered myself lesbian. That language never worked for me. I said dyke. And then my freshman year of college, I made friends with a senior. I wasn't at UCLA, but I made friends with a senior at UCLA in the Women's Studies program, and she was interviewing gay people in West Hollywood about what they thought of the word queer. It was not an accepted word yet, but I really liked it because it seemed more inclusive. Gay, lesbian, bi, and trans. That was the language we had at the time. So really, I came out as a dyke at 15, and then really shifted to identifying as queer by the time I was 18.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, you were so before that your time. I mean, I was coming up 10 years later, almost 10 years later, and also in LA, and really did not feel like any of those were options for me.
Right.
But to know that you did that, 10 years before would have given me the confidence, because I was the first person at my school to take a girl to prom.
Oh, wow.
And it was a kind of a religious school, right? Like, it wasn't religious, it was secular, but we had religious staff. Mm-hmm. And I got so much shit for it, and, I got hate from the teachers.
What school? I know the private schools.
Milken. I went to Milken, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, there was a student that had left. I went to Palisades High School, and there had been a student that was 2 years older that had left. She would have been a senior my sophomore year. And back then, Pali only went 10th to 12th. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a 4-year yet. Mm-hmm. And she was, like doing some sort of sex work in Hollywood.
As a high schooler? As
an 18-year-old who had left home. Mm-hmm. And she agreed to go to my 10th grade prom with me. But my 11th grade prom. Mm-hmm. She agreed to go to the 11th grade prom with me. But I ended up leaving the school before the prom happened. So,
but you would have been like the first one at your school to take a girl to prom.
Yes. Did you enjoy your prom, or was it?
I mean, I enjoyed showing everybody up. I think that was the primary thing. And the girl I went with, she wasn't from my school. She was somebody I had met on Yahoo Personals. But she was close to my age. She was like 20 or maybe 19 when I was 17. Like, we were close. She was so cool and so gorgeous, and she went to both 11th grade and 12th grade proms with me, and I was so in love with her. And for her, I think it was more of a friendship, even though she was queer. Mm-hmm. It wasn't really romantic, but she did her part, and helped me feel really proud to have her on my arm and dressed up, and gave me attention and was my friend and was ambiguous about our relationship with my classmates. So I enjoyed that piece of it. I enjoyed being like, I'm out and proud at this my high school's prom, 11th and 12th grade. I'm wearing these queer clothes. And
I mean, that's trailblazing. I mean, I think people don't realize it because LA is a major city. They think that it's more progressive than it is. It's not. No. And it wasn't. And so even, 9 years behind me, that's trailblazing.
Well, because of Hollywood and because of all the money in LA, it's not, right? It's concentrated around money, and socially it's only somewhat progressive, maybe for gay men more because of Hollywood. But I remember it was very little resources for me. Like, there were no coffee shops when I was growing up in the 90s.
Right.
That were like queer
shops.
coffee
Had Little Frida's closed?
Yeah, it had closed by then.
Yeah. No.
There really wasn't anything.
It wasn't easy to be out in LA not like presenting as a lipstick lesbian.
Well, I'm sure that's true too, yeah.
Yeah. But back to tattoo. So I get this tattoo at 15.
Yeah.
And, one of the things I didn't, an experience I had. I didn't go into getting the tattoo with any awareness of this. But after I got it, I realized, like, this is mine. Like, this is my body. Like, I claimed the place where the tattoo's on my body, I claimed it as mine and my body. And that was a really big deal. I mean, I think culturally in our society, women's bodies are not really for themselves. They're for the male gaze. But also, like, I grew up in a house with a lot of physical and sexual violence. And I also grew up with a mother who had a lot of really strong opinions about what my body should look like. And so here I was, you know, I had this need for the ink, and then I go and have the experience, and then it was like, holy shit, I own this part. This is claiming. So I don't know how I'm not covered in head to toe with tattoos. I really don't. But like that first experience. And so then, you know, before I moved to San Francisco, I think I had like 4 other tattoo experiences. Lulu the pit bull is making herself comfortable and moving around here, so that's what some of that noise is. But, you know, it became important to me, like, oh, I want a woman to do, you know, the next piece. And then I got a woman to do the next piece, but didn't really connect with her art, you know. And then it was like, then I found the artwork I really connected with, and the guy, and he was cool. But, you know, I just kept like there were these missing pieces with tattooing for me. Like, I started knowing what artwork I wanted ahead of time, and I started having, you know, what I was going to put on my body have a really deep meaning. But I was encountering these tattoo artists, and it was a really transactional experience, which is fine. But, you know,
that's how a lot of it used to be. I think before there was a more of a female shop vibe, that was pretty much how it used to be. Yeah.
Well, and even the summer before I moved up here, I to the Bay Area, to San Francisco, I spent a month of vacation in San Francisco, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get a female artist, a queer artist. You know, I was putting these words on my forearms about love, a commitment to like love myself and to love others. And, you know, I was going to a very famous women's shop, and, you know, she did the job fine, and I didn't connect with her at all. And it just was a transactional experience. And I knew that was not syncing up for me. Like, I wanted something different. So I move up here. We go into our apprenticeships. We're living together. You're doing your apprenticeship. And that's where it all came together. I decided I wanted a piece to honor my grandmother. And I wanted the year of her birth at the base of my palm on my wrist, which, you know, is like the root chakra of the hand. And I didn't want it to be in this loud, busy shop and with somebody I didn't know. And that again, like this need to put ink on my body, to really put something on my body that means something to me, and then to have a connection with the person doing it. It all came together. You got permission to open the shop up after hours for me, and we were the only ones in there. We cleared the space energetically. I set up an altar to my grandmother. Then you and I created the container. We called in, I think, the elements. We created a circle, and it was beautiful and sacred. And, you know, you tattooed this tribute to my grandmother, the year 1903, on my wrist. And it was like, okay, this are all the pieces. This is sacred for me. Tattooing, I think there's a way that I felt this need for it from such a young age, and it just took me that long to get all the pieces. That for me, this is about who I am and my soul, and a sacred connection. And you know, since that tattoo, no one else has ever tattooed me. You've been the only person to tattoo me since that piece. What would that have been, 2008 or 2009?
Yeah, I started in 2008, so yeah, it was probably 2009 or 10.
Yeah. And then it was years before I got another piece, but then by that time you were in your own private space in the mission. So this was like years later.
It was like 6 years later, yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, I had, in my life, I a dog. A dog had come into my life who changed my life, Ella. And this dog set me on the path to dog training and dog walking. We'd spend hours together in the hills, and all of a sudden I started a business taking dogs out to the woods off leash. And she's a dog that deeply connected to people, but she didn't jump on them. She didn't lick them. She just had this really gentle nature, and she just loved people. And she taught me how to love people in a new way. She taught me more about unconditional love. And I was like, I knew that our time, that her lifespan was not going to match my lifespan. And I always wanted her walking with me. And so we met up, and, I'd had her paw prints that I got her to walk across butcher paper with non-toxic paint with her paw prints. And you kind of looked at that, and then you're like, let's go outside and throw some water on the ground. And you watched her walk through the water and then onto the dry cement. And, we put her actual paw prints, the actual size, with her actual gait going up the entire right calf. And the thing about that was, it's like, I see you as holding a container in a space when you're tattooing, and you were there holding that container in that space for this experience.
We were doing it together, Ella and I.
Right. But Ella did. She didn't go sit on the dog bed in the corner. She put herself at your feet, in front of your chair, with part of her body under the table, looking up at us the entire time. It was the three of us having this connection and this experience. And so that is how it's continued to come together. Even my next piece, which was, I think, what I sat twice for with you, which was a giraffe and a tree that had come to me in a dream and had been very important to me for a number of years. And then, we're just kind of in the midst of it. And Ella was at those sessions too. And you just said, you want to put Ella in this? Like, just spontaneously, and I love that. I love that you have that you would just offer that suggestion and know that I might say yes or no. And now I have Ella leading the giraffe through the tall grass. Yeah. And it just, the evolution of, like, knowing there was this need for ink, but not really fully understanding it yet. Starting to understand that the images I put on my body were really important to me, but then I wanted the experience to feel more sacred than just transactional, and then to have you in my life and watch you become a tattooist, right? Yeah, and that you and our connection can offer this space, that the space can be sacred, that we are consciously holding the container and having the experience together. It's been really beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. So then, after those few years when I was able to tattoo you, you had to stop getting tattooed because you had plans for more. You wanted more. Yeah. As you said, it's a wonder you're not completely covered.
Right. I wanted to add a splash of color to the giraffe and Ella on the grass because it's all black. It doesn't look like an unfinished piece, but I wanted to add to it. I also wanted to go up and do an entire sleeve of marine life. And I started having these crazy out of nowhere food allergies. Like literally, like all of a sudden driving down the street, and the fruit I had eaten a few, half an hour before, not knowing it was that, like I'm breaking out in hives and my throat's swelling, and I'm pulling over and calling 911, and they're taking me to the ER in an ambulance and putting epi in an IV. I was like, oh, that was so weird. What was that? And then ending up in the ER a couple of days later from another reaction and stuff. And I started having these crazy food allergies, things I'd eaten my whole life. So first it was stone fruit, and then chicken joined, and then avocado, and then peanut butter, and then apples, and then and that went on for a few years with a lot of seeing allergists, naturopath, this specialist, this woo-woo doc, reading this book, that book,
I mean, you could not eat anything. I remember you were like limited to what, 2 foods, like sweet potatoes.
Well, no, those were not good.
What were you eating?
So I was eating. I was still at this point. I was for like a number of years. I was still eating, but the list was shrinking.
Mm-hmm.
I could still eat out at restaurants. I was taking authentic Thai cooking classes and cooking with ingredients from Thailand. I was fine, but then I took a trip to Thailand.
Yeah.
And like my second or third meal there, I went into reaction. I continued to be in reaction. And I had to come home early.
Yeah.
Instead of being there for 3 weeks, I was like finding my way home within a few days.
Yeah, that was really sad.
Yeah. When I came back from that, I mean, everything I was eating, I was reacting. And then I found a nutritionist that sent me for a blood sensitivities test, which is different than the blood allergy test. A food sensitivities test, and it was just showing that I was reactive and sensitive to like everything, and that can change.
Mm-hmm.
And with that test, I was able to whittle it down to in the beginning of 2019. There was about 8 to 10 things I could eat that didn't send me into reaction.
What was it?
Some proteins,
mm-hmm.
And that changed. It was like beef and lamb, and then some vegetables, and that was it. But then the problem was if I ate too much of one thing, meaning, I don't have a lot of selection, so I ate it several days in a row, I would start to react to it. So for a while, like, I couldn't eat the pork. For a while, the only thing I could eat was like elk and bison for animal protein, and then some vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
Then, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years of that or something. I mean, that eating that way got me off this cocktail of antihistamines that I'd been on for years. Because I kept going to doctors and people were like, we don't know what's wrong, just keep taking your antihistamines. I was like on this cocktail.
You can't live like that.
No, you can't. Yeah. And there are long-term issues with antihistamines that people don't talk about. But because of the Thailand trip, I was on prednisone. I was supposed to be on prednisone for 5 days. I couldn't get off prednisone. Every time I even reduced it, I would get hives and swelling in my throat.
Mm-hmm.
So with knowing what these 8 to 10 things I wasn't currently reacting to from this blood test, I was able to get off the prednisone. I was able to get off all the antihistamines. And, I was okay for a couple months, and then I became, like, allergic to the world. Dogs, and I'm a dog walker.
Right.
Pollens, colognes, perfume, nitrile glove. I couldn't be touched or put on a nitrile glove, hand sanitizer, like everything. And that is, we think that my limbic system just went freaked out from all the reactions to the food. It just started being like, anything is a potential danger. And so those environmental, chemical sensitivities that kind of stopped my life. I wasn't working, I just couldn't, I was just, might as well be the queer in the bubble. I came across like a side mention in a podcast, a thing called DNRS, Dynamic Neuro Retraining System. And it's basically retraining the limbic system. And through doing that, which I streamed online, I just watched her classes online, I was able to really reduce the environmental and chemical sensitivities. I could go back out in the woods. I could go back out with dogs. I started my dog business again. This happened right before the pandemic came. So right before the pandemic, I would notice I could still smell somebody's cologne or perfume, but I couldn't smell it from 2 blocks away. Mm-hmm. So my sense of smell was normalizing, which apparently when you get these really big reactions to your environment, that's a symptom, is your smell becomes kind of like super bloodhound or pregnant lady's sense of smell.
That's wild.
And so my smell started to normalize. The colognes and perfumes, I didn't like their scent, but they were no longer causing hives to break out across my throat. I was starting to date again around this time, and I really wanted to be able to use safer sex practices because I grew up with that. I grew up using safer sex practices, but if I put a nitrile glove on, my hand would blow up. It would just swell up and be red.
Yeah.
The doctor wasn't even touching me. She wouldn't even use a nitrile glove on me. So I used this limbic retraining, which is body movement with visualizations and sayings. Like you create a new pathway in your brain. And so I would like put a nitrile glove on and have a reaction, but I'd do my little somatic movements and visualizations and sayings. And then the next day I would do it again and have a smaller reaction. And then the next day I did it again. So 3 times.
That's wild.
And all of a sudden I'm back in nitrile gloves.
That's super wild.
This has dynamic neural retraining system has helped some folks with food stuff. It has not helped me. So finally I got to
substances it worked with, but not eating.
Not eating. I mean, clearly there's a leaky gut issue, but I've been working to heal my leaky gut for years now. And there's clearly something else going on. I got to where I could eat 15, 16, 17 things. But it was weird. Like I'd eat something for a while and then I'd have big reactions, like avocado. I really can't do avocado, but not having it for a couple of years. I have it once. Oh, I'm okay. I have it twice. I'm okay. Third time. Oh, I'm scared of avocado. I'm not going to have it because the reaction was so big. And then I learned this past year about something called histamine intolerance. So certain foods are higher in histamines than others. Avocado, almonds, those are high histamine foods. A lot of teas and coffees are. And so if you've got a lot of things kind of in your system, like if your system's a bucket, if your bucket's low and not full, you can maybe tolerate things that at other times you couldn't. But as your bucket gets fuller
of histamines,
it can't tolerate, so you'll start to have reactions.
Got it.
And so that's what I'm working with. I spent 3.5 years completely off of. I mean, the only thing I ate were certain sustainably raised proteins and some vegetables. I hadn't had fruit, no grains, no sugars, no packaged food, nothing that I didn't cook myself. The only dairy I had was cultured butter. If the butter is cultured, I have a much better chance of being okay with it. And then
does cultured mean like ghee, kind of? Is that what cultured is?
Cultured is it's like a probiotic. It becomes a probiotic. They've add cultures to it.
Okay, got it.
Different.
Like I eat cottage cheese that's cultured.
Yes. So there's some butter that is and some that isn't. It's hard to find the cultured butter. I mean, it's the Bay Area, so you can find a little bit more easily. But, and I was able to start adding some things back in, But, 3.5 years of having a really limited diet. And I was kind of from a place of like, oh, woe is me. Like, this is lack. This is... Why can't I have these things? I'm supposed to have healed by now. I was, this was supposed to heal me, and this hasn't happened. I just was like, screw it. And about 7 months ago, I started eating wheat and sugar again. And, well, let me put it this way. In those 3.5 years, my weight normalized, which I had not been able to figure out for decades. Eating paleo, being a dog walker, going to doctors. I just had all this like unexplained weight gain. So all of a sudden now I can't eat things. My weight normalizes. My blood sugar normalizes. I reverse the beginnings of fatty liver disease. My inflammation markers in my blood work are all normal, which I'd been getting my blood work for inflammation done since I was 27, and it had never been normal. It had always been high no matter what I did. And my good cholesterol that they'd always said, we want you to bring up your good cholesterol. It's very hard to do. That shot up through the roof. Like last
because
time
you were eating such healthy things.
Right. I was eating, clean, high fat.
Yeah.
Clean animal products and vegetables. I wasn't even eating fruit because I would have reactions. And so here's this time I'm in restriction, I'm in deprivation, I'm thinking of myself as sick. But like all of my lab work and all of these markers of health and are showing less inflammation. Like everything is not just normal, they're like really good. My numbers are like incredible. And then about 7 months ago, I was like, fuck it, I think I can do wheat and sugar. I've healed my gut. Because if you have an imbalance of opportunistic bacteria in your gut, you're going to crave things that feed that, like sugar, wheat,
Yeah.
processed foods. But I hadn't had that in so long. I said, well, and I take probiotic tonics every day. So I thought, well, I probably am okay with some wheat and sugar now. Well, me personally, I'm not. It just 7 months later, and now I have all this, my glucose numbers have gone up. I'm having asthma every day. I'm actually going to get my labs done next week, but I'm sure all my numbers are not going to be perfect anymore. They're going to...
Yeah.
And what I realized from this is I've been shown the path to optimal health for my body. When I had all those things taken away, when I had no choice, right? It was eat this. If you eat that, you could end up in the ER,
right,
from a reaction. You know, because in my 20s, I had been going to doctors for joint pain. And I did that in my 30s, and I did that in my early 40s too, and there had been no answers. And it's like, oh, like it just clicked for me about a week ago. I can choose to eat wheat and sugar, and my body will react with inflammation and asthma and joint pain and irritability and all of these things. And if I don't want that, if I want to make a different choice, kind of the experience I've had the last several years have shown me the foods that are optimal for my body. Yes, they're few in number, but I'm back off wheat now, about a week, and I'm tapering off sugar to be off of it by New Year's Eve. So it's wild. But because of that, that's kind of why I have not
gotten tattooed.
Right.
Yeah, so you, because of all these allergies, you haven't been able to get tattooed. Or you're not sure how your body will react.
There was a period of time, especially when I was allergic to everything, like the environment and everything. I wasn't doing lotions, I didn't know if I could get the vaccine, but I healed enough. And then, with a lot of doctor consulting and being watched longer, I got the vaccine. So I don't think tattooing is out of my reach for the future, but I think there's more healing of my body,
Well, so in case it would help, well, first of all, black is carbon. That's all. There's nothing else. It's just carbon. So that could be the most safe option for any future forays, the first forays into new tattoo work. So you were able to go back to walking dogs.
Yes. January 2020, I started my dog business again. Every once in a while, especially if they've gone through the woods and picked up stuff, if they rub up against my skin, sometimes I will get a little bit of a rash, but
overall it's pretty good.
It's fine. Yeah.
And you feel good and energetic to be out in the woods and walking that much. It's a really pretty physically intensive job.
Yes, it is. However, there's also, there's a way that the dogs, you don't get as much distance as you would think. You got to go find that one that's wandered off, and, you got to stop for this one, or this doggie's pokey. And then, my afternoon are the young ones that want to wrestle, and we get distance and stuff, but my afternoons are seniors. And some days the seniors don't let you get very far, but they want to get out in the woods too. So I get 10,000 steps a day easily when I have 2 packs of dogs.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So when I first got my dog Lulu, who's now 9, maybe 9.5 at this point, I'm not sure. Blue was the person who was really right there for me, because Lulu was a stray dog. She was pretty feral, really. She was never mean to humans ever, but just so scared of bicycles, people in coats, people with sticks, people with skateboards. That's still not resolved, but I think it's too late now. But Blue was the person who helped me train her, to get her to be a dog one could have in a city.
And when you first moved to the East Bay and you were living in Oakland before you had moved out to San Leandro for a short time, she came with the pack. And she was off leash.
She was great.
Off leash in the woods and the beach with other dogs. And
I know. I wish we could have continued that, because she's no longer that good with dogs.
I had my special call. I would go, Lulu, and because if I didn't know where she was for a second, and she would come running up behind me, jump up, and hit my back with a paw. Be like, I'm right here. Be like, okay, dog.
Yeah, no, that was so amazing that you had her at that time. Well, as we are winding down towards the finish line of this episode, I would like to know, and given that it's New Year's, are there things you have as potential goals that you want to accomplish in this next year with work and health and relationship and anything? Are there trips you want to take? Do you have some predictions?
So with health, just kind of really embracing and returning to the foods that are in alignment with my body, that make me feel the best.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited about that. I've really had kind of a paradigm or a mental shift around that in the last few days, of instead of something that's, I can only eat a few things and then I'll be able to heal and maybe add more. And it's like, I've really shifted to like, oh, I'm going to eat the things that really promote my body feeling good and my health. And I'm excited about that.
That's amazing. It's a big shift from accepting, wanting something different that you can't have, and accepting what is.
Right.
That's really beautiful.
And I'm going to ride that as long as I can, because things are spiralic. There will be stuff that comes up again later. As far as work, I'm really with the dogs. I'm really happy right now. I do take out the dogs about 26 hours a week, and I can support myself if I rent a studio in Oakland. But I'm also a poker player, and so I have some goals to be able to kind of put enough hours and study into that to expand my profits in that area, because that will serve as kind of rebuilding my retirement incomes that I've had to use for my health in the last few years, and just just more freedom, like you said, to take trips and stuff. So just kind of a coming back to my center and my alignment with eating, expanding my financial resources through these avenues that I choose, dog walking and poker. Trips. It's funny, someone has offered to take me out of town for my birthday in May, and we're trying to figure out where, just local, a local thing. Okay. So there will be some sort of local, I don't know if it's, something like Monterey or Mendocino or, Guerneville. I'm thinking after this year, maybe 2024, I'd like to go international again. So cool. Also, I'm patting the dog. I'm petting Lulu this whole time, and I know that might make some noise for the mic. My apologies.
Could make some fur sounds. Yeah. And the last question is, what's a very small thing that's made you happy lately?
It's not. I've got 3 things.
Okay, 3 is great.
3 things. So, this past year I've returned to reading fiction. Years I've been reading like entrepreneurial and spiritual and personal development, and this past year I've returned to reading literature.
Would you say it's fiction. Because you're dating a really great writer of fiction?
Yes. That has been a huge influence, and that's made me really happy. Also, so I'm dating this incredibly brilliant, kind, compassionate, loving, handsome, hot as fuck genderqueer butch, which surprised me because I am really love femmes, and I'm dating this incredibly handsome, sexy as fuck genderqueer butch, and spending time with them makes me really happy.
I would say that's not a small thing.
That's not a small thing.
No.
But cooking for her also makes me happy, because to be able to share a meal with somebody, and usually what I cook is like a piece of clean animal protein and like 3 vegetables, and she loves being fed lots of vegetables.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, what's the third thing? The cooking.
The cooking.
Okay.
The reading fiction again, and spending time with the mystery writer.
Whose name won't mention for privacy concerns.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I love you very deeply, very dearly. We've been friends for so long. It's been such a gift for me. Thank you for agreeing to be on the podcast. Thank you.
Thank you. I love you, and to watch, in a sense, right? I've known you since you were in your 20s.
The baby.
You're knocking on the door of 40 soon. It's just been incredible to watch you and your path and your journey and your expansions. So, love you.
Love you.